There we go, and we're live. What's going on,
Yay!
folks? It works.
Yeah, it's alive.
There we go.
How many technical people does it take to set up a live stream? Yeah.
I know, right? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. But you know what? That's then over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be tweaking and fixing and adjusting things. So it'll be fun. It'll be cool.
Yeah,
It'll be cool.
It will.
the process will be super fun.
We gotta trust the process, right? Just like they do in
Yes.
sports.
Yes,
Gotta
yes.
trust the process.
That's it.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So folks, this is something that we've all been talking about doing for a really long time. I feel like it's been almost a year, to be honest with you.
Close.
I mean, we're in
A little bit.
September now.
Yeah.
I think we started talking about this in December about how we wanted to start coming together to stream and talk about .NET and all of us just sharing our own unique experiences about like what .NET is for us from a work perspective, from a development perspective, from a creativity perspective. And so I'm really excited about all of us coming together to kind of share our stories and kind of show the community .NET from our eyes kind of thing. So why don't we start off with kind of just letting folks know, well, what are we doing here exactly? Like what exactly are we talking about right now at this moment? So I'm going to ask, I guess I'm going to moderate, I suppose. I guess that's what's going to happen.
Okay, cool.
And for folks that are watching live, we obviously have not planned this out. We're just, we just press the button and we're going to let it go and we're going to see what happens.
Just doing it, freestyling.
Yeah,
Record.
yeah, sometimes magic things happen when you just kind of like press go, right?
Yeah.
So Rodney, Alon, why don't we start with just some introductions? We haven't done that yet. Alon, why don't you introduce yourself to folks? Like who are you? What are we doing here? Like what's going on?
Yeah. Hi everybody. My name is Elan Dene. I am a self-taught developer. I have my own YouTube channel called Elan Dene Codes and a book study series and community called .NET Book Study. I've been learning C# and .NET and studying that since 2020. So it's been 2 years now. And for me, like, I'm excited about Inside.NET because I feel like since I'm still kind of recent in my coding journey, I like that I have that newer perspective when it comes to learning how to code and learning about .NET. So I think that perspective can be very valuable.
I want to tell a story. And I don't know if you know my side of the story, but I remember when you and I met.
Yes.
It was might have been about a year ago, probably like a year and a half ago, right? And it was my friend Maria Nagaga who works on
Wonderful woman.
Maria works on .NET Interactive, minimal APIs, and a bunch of other things within the space, right? And Maria was like, "Oh, hey, you should check this person out." And I'm like, "Okay, who is this? A friend of yours?" Like I don't know who this person is. You're just sending me like random Twitter things, right? And I looked at your stuff and I saw you had your YouTube channel, your .NET book study. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I'm like, this is exactly what we need. And I got really excited just because of the fact that I don't see a lot of Black people proactively streaming .NET, right? Mm-hmm. Which sounds like a very niche thing, right? Like there's not a lot of people streaming .NET that don't work in the Microsoft space.
Yes.
To be honest with you. Like if you're not employed or a partner, like you don't really see a lot of that. And never mind to seeing people that look like us in that space as well. So like that was really exciting to me just to have like that representation, right? Yes. And so that alone, I was just like, whatever I need to do to like support that energy, like I'm all for it, right? So I just wanted to say that really quickly. So I think it was .NET Conf was going on. I think you did a .NET Conf talk last year.
I did.
And then you've done tons of other conferences and other events and stuff since then, right?
Yeah. Well, I will say, like, technically my next conference will be in Boston at DevReach. But yeah, I've been on several like podcasts and stuff, and it's just been one huge experiment.
Yeah, that's amazing. So definitely today, I definitely want to dive into like what that experience has been like for you. But before we do that, Rodney, why don't you tell folks again a little bit about your history, like who you are, what do you do, and what do you like? What are you doing here, man? Like, what's going on?
I'm just kind of here to hang out, right? No. I've been a software developer for I don't want to date myself, but I've been doing C# in some form or fashion since the 1.0 version of the framework. I've done everything from large scale web integration in enterprise to mom and pop shops. Currently, I am one of the maintainers for Reactive UI. I've become a reactive programming I don't know, spokesperson. I love the stuff. I can't get enough of it. And I work primarily in the mobile space these days. So I've been doing a lot of Xamarin with C#. And I'm really just kind of here because I agree with the previous thought, is that, there's not a lot of folks out here talking about .NET. And it's one of the reasons why I started streaming personally. And this was an opportunity for me to kind of shed some spotlight on people that I've met in the .NET community that are doing really amazing and exceptional things that the average .NET developer may not know about. So really just kind of here to share my experiences, whatever knowledge I have, and learn from the amazing people in this community.
Sure. And obviously I gotta tell our story now, right? And I think it was fairly similar, right? In the fact that I learned about you through .NET Conf. I think you'd done a .NET Conf thing a while back, and then also you were part of the .NET Foundation at one point.
Yes.
Right. So I was just like, oh, who's this guy? Like, he's like everywhere. Like, I'm seeing him here and I'm seeing him there. Like, who is this person? And so, at the time I was employed at Microsoft, and so I'm like, well, let me see like what's happening, right? And just kind of click around and look around a little bit. And for me, I've like you used to like you said, you do a little bit of stuff with reactive extensions and React UI and like that world of stuff, and it's always been something that I wanted to learn about. And so for me, if I want to learn about something, obviously I'm going to go to the people that know how the thing works, right? Yeah. I'm going to go there and I'm going to ask questions. And at the time when I was doing a different show, I was like, well, I could learn in front of everybody, right? And teach other people as well. Why don't we have Rodney come on the show and let's put like, titles and banners and whatever around it. But at the end of the day, I was really just being selfish. Like, I wanted to learn some stuff that you knew. And I was just like, let's just have an honest conversation in the public about it, right? And I thought that went really well. And it went to the point too that I think you came back like one or two more times, in addition to that initial one, which was great. You know what I mean? I thought between us, like the chemistry was really good.
Yep.
Right. And so now, and I think it's important for me to tell those stories because now I think those relationships have led to us being here in this moment, in this box that's on everyone's screen. Right. You know what I mean? Like we've met each other through like these similar interests, you know what I mean? And now hopefully like we can amplify those interests in what we're going to try to do here, which is again, like just have honest, open conversation about .NET, right? That's not fueled by the agenda of any given company or any release timelines or, any types of politics. Like this is a free zone for just, whatever our opinions are. And you know what? Sometimes we might be wrong. That's okay. Right? Sometimes we'll be right too, right? And I think no one here has any ego from the perspective of saying, well, I was wrong. You know what I mean? But at the same time, yeah, I mean, and that's fine. You know what I mean? Like this is going to be a learning process. We're all going to learn. The three of us are going to learn, and hopefully all of you that are watching are going to learn too. And with that, like hopefully we'll all elevate and move forward together and just do some special stuff. So so there you go. I'm just looking in the chat to see what's going on. Yeah, Rod, you got a lot of fans, man. A lot of hi Rodneys. Rodney Magic is back. Love it. Okay. Yeah, love to hear for the folks that are inside of the chat. Yeah, definitely let us know. One, if you are .NET developers, I hope you are, but if you're not, let us know too. Like, what are some of the things that you're interested in when it comes to the world of .NET? And while you think about that, while you kind of formulate your own answers, why don't we talk about that? Like, why don't the three of us kind of talk about what do we care about or what are we thinking about? What do we think that's interesting in the world of .NET, right? And I'll start. I don't think I've spoken a lot, so let me start.
But you didn't introduce yourself.
I didn't. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Why are you here?
Good catch. Yeah.
Why am I here?
Wait a
I'm just here to
minute.
sit back and chill, man. Just watch it. Why am I here? So hey, I'm Cecil. I've been doing .NET pretty much all my career, right? And I did it because auto college, that's what people were hiring for at the time, right? And so I got a job doing .NET. Like I didn't learn .NET in school or anything of the sort. Like I got a job. They gave me a book. That's when people used to read books, and the books were like 1,000 pages long, right? And they're here, go learn this .NET thing, and in 2 or 3 months, like we expect you to be like where everyone else is and like working. And so that's what I did, right? And throughout the years, I've just continued doing .NET stuff. That being said, obviously I have experience doing other things. I could do a little bit of Python and HTML and CSS and some database stuff or whatever the case is. But like .NET has always been like that foundation for me. The reason I bring it up too is because a lot of folks always say, oh, hey, why don't you do something else or learn a different language or whatever the case is. And I always think learning is good, experimenting and exploring is good. But like .NET has been great to me. .NET feeds me and my family and takes care of takes care of a lot of things outside of the keyboard, right? And so, I've been very blessed to be in a stable position and then have the privilege that I have to continue to talk about it, to continue to be here with these folks and meet these amazing people that I'm standing up next to today. And that's because of .NET, right? Like .NET has taken me like all around the world, right? Like on planes, .NET has taken me to Africa, right? It's taken me to the UK. It's taken me all over the place. So again, like I love .NET because, that's the life that it's afforded me to have. You know what I mean? But again, I think it's because, again, I had the opportunity to learn and have experience with different things, right? And so, again, hopefully a little bit of that comes out in our streams, right? Like what are all our different experiences and what are all the things that we've done and the things that we've worked on? And where has .NET taken all of us like throughout our different careers and things of that nature? And then where do we see us taking it in the future too, right? Like we're still here, right? We're not done yet. So, there's still a lot more to happen, a lot more to grow and to do. So, I'm kind of just here to continue to kind of just spread the .NET love from a very non-corporate perspective. You know what I mean? And then kind of just see where we can all go together.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. So my question, now that we got that out the way. So Alon, I'm gonna start with you.
Okay.
Right? So could you tell me like what are some of the things that you think are really interested in .NET and some of the things that you kind of see yourself talking about as we go through this process of like, streaming and doing videos and stuff?
Oh my goodness, that's a lot.
Big question.
Yeah, that's a big question because I do feel like learning about .NET for me, it's been such a larger experiment for myself. Like, so one of the things is just like I've been learning about the power of the mind, and not to go on like a whole different tangent, but I think by changing my mindset, it's what allowed me to learn about .NET and to learn so publicly. And I feel like the biggest thing that I've been liking is just the conversations. When it comes to creation and what do we want to see from .NET. So that's just kind of what I've been discussing. Like even on my YouTube channel, I've started to like interview people and different .NET devs about their experiences and their stories. And I feel like I'm not as technical as I probably intended to be at the beginning of learning .NET. For me, it's just like more of the people aspect and like what, how can .NET amplify our stories? So that's just kind of where my head's been at recently.
Yeah, I think the thing I'd add to that is when I look at technology, like technology is bigger than just like an industry or profession, but it's like a culture, right?
Yes.
And when I think about culture, what does the word culture mean? It's the things that affects our behavior and how we live our lives, and what our day-to-day looks like the music we listen to, the food that we eat,
Yes.
like the environment that we live in, right? Like all of those things, you think about how that affects us. Like I consider that to be culture. And technology at this point in time, like, has evolved into a thing that affects culture. You know what I mean? And so in culture, I always believe that there's always a space for different types of people. You know what I mean? Because like within a culture, everyone has different roles and everyone has a job, right? And you have a thing you have to do in that space.
Yes.
And so when I think about the culture of .NET, now more so than ever before, now that it's open source and the world is starting to look a little bit different, now we're starting to see spaces for folks that are not just a web forms developer or
Yeah.
a whatever, right? Like now we can have folks that maybe you can make a living writing about .NET.
Yeah.
Like that is a thing that can happen, right? Like you can make a living interviewing people, staffing folks. Like there's so many different opportunities outside of just saying I am going to actually write C#, right? And when you think .NET, you usually think C#, right?
Yeah.
I'm just being honest with you.
You're
F#
gonna make the
folks, don't
DB
get mad at
crowd
me.
mad.
Don't get mad at me. It is what it is. Oh, we can talk about that. I think that could be another conversation we can have within the stream as well. Again, from a very like honest perspective. But again, for most code bases and most projects, you think about C#, you think about VB for some of the older web form type applications and things of that nature. But that's what you think about, right? But the whole point is that that's not it, right? Like that's not where the buck stops. You know what I mean? Like there's so many different opportunities. And I think a part of, again, what I'd love for us to do here is highlight some of those opportunities and maybe even create some for other people just to let them know like what's possible, right? And then when we do that, if we can do that, I think we'll be successful. I think that's what success sounds and looks like for me, is being able to make other people successful, by like removing the barriers, the hidden knowledge and the secret kung fu between .NET, right? Like let's just like make it open and let folks understand like what's possible, and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and let's just keep going.
Yeah, I feel like that's just a huge thing that I've come to understand. It's just like, where do I fit in when it comes to technology and learning? Like, do I want to like build apps, or like do I want to build? Am I more interested in building communities, or maybe a little bit of both? But that's just I'm still kind of in that process of learning. But right now, I just like the conversations, and I love how .NET can be used to build communities and to amplify stories and to help make us all better. And going back to culture. So
exactly. So Rodney, I'm gonna switch over to you, man. So again, same question. Like, what are some of the things that are exciting to you in the world of .NET right now?
So one of the most exciting things in the world of .NET for me is kind of like the architecture paradigms that we live with, right? Like I've lived through the whole if not is post back lifestyle to the current modern everything is containerized and developers don't use new objects. So I've seen a good amount of that change. I've worked across a lot of different verticals and I've worked in a lot of different application spaces. I've primarily been boots on the ground developer for all that time. And I guess the biggest thing that I talk about even with my own teams is, there's so much that we can do when we don't put ourselves in a box, right? Yes, we can say that this is the way that applications are supposed to be written and follow the best practices to the letter. But, I was having a conversation with somebody on Twitter yesterday, like best practices aren't best for everyone. So, developing an application, building software, solving problems, which is at the heart of what we do as developers, right? Solving the problem is what's most important. So how do we solve the problem best for our team that works with our paradigms, that works with our culture and our code base, right? Some people are still working on legacy .NET framework applications to this day. How do they move into the .NET core space, which is moving into its 7th iteration at this point? So what's exciting to me is really this whole concept of .NET being unboxed, right? Which is actually funny because that's the first .NET conference I ever went to, was a .NET Unbox conference, and the concept was brilliant to me. A couple weeks later, I had a Mac. I spun up a C# environment on my Mac and started going to town. And I've been a full-time C# developer on a Mac for 7 years. So this new world where .NET is no longer this huge paywall. Because I remember to get a MSDN license to get Visual Studio 2008 was going to cost me $5,000. Right. And that's just for me to play around on the weekends so that my company doesn't own the code that I write. Right.
Yeah.
That was the investment back then. So fast forward to today, where we have Visual Studio Community Edition, VS Code. We have multiples upon multiples of ways. Rider, we've got many different ways to go about building .NET applications outside of what the traditional path was, 10 years ago even. So now we've got this opportunity to really showcase what it means to follow patterns, what it means to build an application. You're using an app, you're building web, I'm building mobile, somebody's building desktop. The entire promise of this, I'm not going to call it that, but this unified platform and building an application once, right? So MVVM has always been Microsoft's preferred way of pitching architecture, right? MVVM has been the staple since as long as I can remember. But now with Maui coming down the pipeline and this concept of Comet, and now MVU, which is outside of the .NET space, is now coming into the .NET space, that makes me excited, right? A completely new paradigm for how to develop and deliver an application. Maybe it's better, maybe it's worse. Maybe I get 3 months into it and scrap it and go back to MVVM. That's fine, but the reality that the new world where Microsoft applications are being developed and delivered is completely different than what it was, 10, 15 years ago. And what does that mean for the future? What does it mean 5 years from now when I can right click and create a new application in my IDE of choice and be able to target web, mobile, desktop, all from one project? That world excites me because I can't tell you the number of times where I've had to be like, okay, let's write it for this and let's write it for that and let's write it for this platform and that platform. And in my mind, it's just a head, right? It's just a target. We just target a platform and the application should just pick up and run on that platform. So I'm excited about that promise and the work that the .NET team has done. Maui just released about a month ago, and here we are, standing here looking out into the future saying we might be able to get to, in the next 5 years, building an application once and deploying it everywhere. So that's an exciting thing.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And like you said, like that's the dream that we've heard years ago, right? Like write once, run everywhere scenario, right?
Yep.
I think the thing when we said that first, and when I say we mean the industry, like when the industry first said that, there were only so many places that you could put an application, right? Like when we were having those conversations, the iPhone wasn't a thing yet, right? And IoT wasn't a thing yet, right? Like AI and all this stuff weren't things yet. There were no containers, right? Like
there was no microservices. There was no infrastructure behind the scenes to deploy apps faster, right? So yeah,
it was different. And so now everywhere is a lot more places than what it used to be before, right? But again, if we could still keep that promise and move forward, and then just being able to target all those devices and all those platforms, and then still allow folks to just focus on a relatively smaller code base. I think that'd be amazing. Just looking in the chat real quick, I see we have some friends here hanging out. I just want to make sure we give them some acknowledgments real quick. Our friend Copper Beardy is here. Copper Beardy is a big streamer on Twitch, so I hope you guys go over and see what he's doing. Glad to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing good. And then our buddy here says .NET F# for me. I love it. We're definitely gonna have to talk about some F# on the stream for sure. We'll make sure we do that. We'll put that on the schedule. We'll get some F# folks. That being said, again, so if F# is the thing that y'all are interested in doing, like we're interested in having a conversation. So definitely feel free to send us any any recommendations for topics or folks that you think we might want to highlight that do great F# work. And we want to talk to everybody, right? Like, people all across the globe, wherever they live, whatever language they speak. We're going to have to talk to them in English, but like wherever they are, we're definitely willing and open to talk about folks about like all things .NET specific. Okay, so now I guess for me, if I think about what are some of the things that are exciting to me in .NET, I think there's three big products or topics. I think .NET Interactive for me is a big thing, and I think when I say it's a big thing, I think it is a bigger milestone for us than what we realize it's allowing us to do. You know what I mean? I think about back in the day when, if you wanted to write a little bit of .NET, like you had to create a whole app and it had an SLN file and a CS project file, and there was there were many things that had to kind of go forward. And I never really had the opportunity to create like a notebook, and a notebook that I could like just create really quickly and throw it away if I wanted to, or even a notebook that I could like share with people, right? And again, going back to that idea of like sharing knowledge, right? Like having those opportunities to share knowledge in a way that's very accessible to people, I think is really important, right? And I think, again, that's one of the projects that really allows us to do that. I think, again, when you think about accessibility, and I think about, again, like minimal APIs, right? Again, for me, it's more than just, there was a PM that needed to like do something and create a thing. But now it's more so of here we have an opportunity to make it easier for people to get started, right?
Yeah.
Here we have an opportunity to get more people into the ecosystem and into the space of building and being productive and using the tools that we already know and love and appreciate. But now let's bring everyone else in here, right? And then when we get more people in here, I think, what we get more ideas, right? We get
ideas.
We get more creative thinking. You know what I mean? And so again, I think like those two projects in particular are really interesting because they allow us to do like that type of stuff.
Yeah.
When I think about the third one that I think for me is really interesting, it's definitely, and I'm kind of piggybacking off of some of the stuff that Rodney was talking about. Like I think about Maui, and I think about the ability for us to not just run on Windows or on Mac or on tablets or on smartwatches, but like we could literally run our stuff everywhere. And that makes me think a lot about, again, like, so I mentioned earlier, like I'd gone to Africa a couple of years ago, and it's very interesting. Like as we look at cultures and we look at how they use computing, it's very different, right? Like, it's very easy for us to assume because of where we are and where we live that like everyone uses technology like we do, and that's not the case at all, right? Like it means and it plays different roles in everyone's life. And so when I go to the Caribbean and I go to South America and I go to like these other places and I get to see firsthand how people are using stuff. Again, that story of making the stuff that we build accessible and available in these different platforms is so much more important than we know, right? It's so much more important than like GitHub issues and tickets. You know what I mean? Like it's deeper than that. You know what I mean?
Cecil, was there something that you can recall, like something specific in the way that they used, like these different places used technology?
Yeah, like, so I'll give you an example. So one of my favorite conferences that I went to was a Caribbean Developers Conference. It's in the Dominican Republic. And the last time that I went, we went down and we interviewed like some local developers, just learning about like some of the different things that they're doing with technology. And almost all of the projects were either related to healthcare or agriculture, right? And I was like, well, why is that the case, right? And as I'm talking to these people, so if you think about the Caribbean, right? Like you think about like a collection of a lot of very tiny islands, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, if for folks that, know geography a little bit, like every time, for instance, a hurricane passes or a storm comes, it leaves off the coast of Africa, it goes through the Atlantic, and it comes to the US. But what a lot of folks forget that between the US and Africa is the Caribbean, right? So what that means is that like literally every hurricane that passes goes through the Caribbean, right? It will, unless it like shoots straight north, right? It's going to go through the Caribbean. So now what does that mean, right? That means for a society that is based on growing their own crops and livestock, that's a problem, right? And so now so agriculture is a big thing. So now a lot of the projects that I saw was, for instance, folks using things like .NET and IoT and some microservices to try and, for instance, like detect diseases in plants, try to detect like what are the levels of the water saturation in the soil or the different nutrients in the soil, because again, like they have to make sure that these things are protected, right? Like they have like them, and some of them are in greenhouses and some of them are outside. Like how can I detect temperature, right? And again, like I know for a lot of us that, you know, people are playing with Raspberry Pis and doing all this kinds of stuff, and you're like, oh, I do that downstairs in my living room, right? But again, I'm talking about perspective. Like if your little plants in your house dies, you're cool. You're probably going to go to Walmart or go to the supermarket and you'll be fine. If these people lose this, like that's thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that aren't going to be able to eat. Okay, so that is a very different scale of importance, right? So I see them doing things like that. I see them doing things like there's another project. I can't remember the exact name of it, but what they were doing was they created a website, and essentially it was a portal to allow people to get better healthcare. One of the issues was in the country, it was very difficult for them, and when I say them, like just regular folks, to find good options for healthcare, right? Some people were charging a lot of money, and some people, the pricing was different, right? Like people were doing some things that were making it a little bit difficult, and it was almost like, like when you're in certain places, like the person that controls knowledge is, the person that kind of controls everything.
Yes.
So this project essentially was just giving folks the information they need to make good choices when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to insurance. And again, like we look at it and it's just like, oh, this is just a website and it has like some Angular, React, blah, blah, blah thing in the front end and .NET in the back end. Like, oh, we do that every day, right? But for them, like that's not as trivial as that. Like that's a big deal. You know what I mean? Because again, information accessibility is important, right? Being able to, again, get healthcare and insurance is important, right? Being able to take care of your crops and your livestock and your, whatever you have on your farm, like that stuff is important. And so again, like just trying to understand or see the perspective of other people, that live in these different places and what technology actually means to them. So that for me is always like a very humbling moment, like a very eye-opening moment. So that's why I say, like, when I want us to have like these conversations, like I want us to talk about all of it, and I want us to be very open about it, because again, like sometimes when we talk about, like, for instance, let's say we have a conversation about performance, right? Performance might not be a big deal to some people that have like the iPhone 16 with like super tons of RAM. But if you think about other people that are in other parts of the world that are using your app too, and let's say like this thing is their only computing device, and your app is burning the battery off of their phone, then that's a problem, right? And for some people, like that might be the only computing device in their household. You know what I mean? I know students that like take their phone, and I learned this was a thing the other day, and they do presentations on here. They create, when I say presentations, like slide decks on here. They create, documents on here. Like they do a lot of things on their device. You know what I mean? Sometimes, some of these phones, like you can plug them into a monitor through a USB-C cable, and then now your monitor becomes like a second screen, but still we're talking about running off of a phone, right? So again, we think about going back to the original point, like again, you think about performance, you think about, being careful with the uses of resources, right? Like you think about some of these better practices. Again, a lot of folks say, oh, power is cheap and storage is cheap, and well, cheap for who? You know what I mean? Because like saying these things, like we make these broad statements and they're always very subjective. You know what I mean? Again, like I don't want us to be that. I don't want us to be I'm going to make the assumption that this is okay, right? Because it might be okay for you, but it might not be okay for me, because me and you don't live in the same house. You know what I mean?
You know what happens when you make assumptions, right?
Exactly. Well, exactly, right? You can't do that. So again, I think I think that makes a lot of sense. Oh, okay. Look, I see. So Dan is on here. Dan says, speaking of islands in the Caribbean, hello from Roatan. Where's that?
Roatan.
I feel like
I'm
I should know.
Google.
Welcome,
I feel
Dan.
bad now. Like, where is this? Oh, he's on Honduras. Okay, gotcha.
Nice.
Gotcha. Well, man, I hope you're having a good time though. I have never been to that country, to be honest with you. Look, I had to go.
I'm very curious.
I had to go like Google Bing it and try and figure out where that was. Well, I mean, appreciate you, man. Glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for.
Yes, for all the folks that are just joining us that may or may not know what's happening. So, we're the three of us are deciding to get together to create some content around .NET. So today we're kind of just hanging out. We're just chatting. As you can see, no screens are being shared and no code is being shown. But we really just want to, again, we're just having an open conversation with everyone, talking about, how we feel about the .NET community, what we want to build, what we want to do. And I promise in the future there'll be tons of demos and tons of code that you could look at. But I think it's also cool, like every now and again, we might do some of these where we just don't show code and we just have like open free flow conversation. We kind of just chat with you folks in the chat and see what's going on, and just do some mental health check-ins every now and again. I think that's always a cool thing to do. Cool. So we talked about just now, so what are some of the things that we thought were exciting? Let's go back a little bit, and I'd love to talk about like how did each of us get into the space of .NET? Like what was your .NET moment that made you be like, oh, okay, well, I want to try this thing out and see what happens, right? And so, Alon, I'm going to start with you again. Like, how did you get here? And get here as in, like, how did you get into the .NET community?
Yeah, for me, it was the pandemic and me being like working for a charter school that got me into this space. It was just seeing people lose their jobs who weren't kind of tech related, and me having the assumption that my job would eventually become automated. I was thinking like, okay, shoot, I got to get ahead of this. I need to learn a tech skill. And then that's when I went on YouTube and I found this C# content creator. And it was basically like skills you need to get into the tech industry. And I didn't want to waste too much time trying to figure out what language I wanted to study. So I just chose C# because he was C#. And that's when I'm so happy that I chose C#. Just seeing how like the awesome experiences I've had because of learning C#. But I found the community on Twitter. I made my Twitter account and I looked up the C# hashtag and the .NET hashtag, and I met so many amazing people and friends, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me feel good to hear that you were able to, again, like create your Twitter account and very easily connect with people, again, like in this space. And again, I saw you on .NET Conf, so I mean, I'm like, I think that is an amazing thing to point out, that hey, as a new person, you have been welcomed and accepted into the space. Yes. And you found folks that are willing to share information with you and to share advice with you to help you along your journey, wherever it is that your journey takes you, that you have support. And I think that's important.
Yes, that's one thing that I love about .NET is just how supportive the community is and how everyone has just embraced me with open arms and open hearts. So, yeah.
That sounds like a song lyric. Did you get that from a song? I feel like that's a song.
I write poetry in my free time.
Okay, I love it. What about you, Ronnie? So tell me, like, what was your, what was the thing that brought you into .NET?
So like .NET the community or .NET like the technology?
It's like the technology specifically.
Wow. So yeah, I got a job working for a company. I had learned C++ and Java in school. They said, oh, well, this is C#. They sat me down and kind of the rest is history. Like I said, I've been working on C# since the 1.0 version of the framework. My first project ever was converting classic ASP to .NET. Fast forward 10 years, I was working at a medium-sized software company where we were migrating from on-premises to software as a service. I met one of my better friends and mentors, David Driscoll, and he was like, "Hey, you need to get involved in open source," right? Like because he was one of the lead architects there. I was a senior developer, and we would always talk about what the best way to do things were. So he said, "Rodney, pick a project, get involved." I found the cake project because build automation is like my closet passion. Matthias Carlson actually approved my first pull request ever on GitHub. And really the rest was kind of history. I made friends along the way. I became a mobile developer. As a result of becoming a mobile developer, I found reactive extensions and reactive UI. And I got involved because people asked me to. And I enjoy it, right? Like I enjoy sitting here solving problems when there's nothing better to do, right? Like the idle hands are the devil's playground, right? So I try and keep my fingers on the keyboard as much as possible and write as much code as possible so I can keep myself out of trouble. But that's really what it is I met really nice people in the space. I mean, Dan Siegel is another one. He's here. Matthias Koch, he's here. Like I met all of these wonderful people that were just like, they didn't care who I was. They didn't care what walk of life I came from. They didn't care about any of the peripheral stuff that I deal with on my day-to-day in America, because they're dispersed all over the world. Sure. I met these people and they were like, "Hey, Rodney, you have passion. You can write code. We can use that." And they, all of them have helped guide me in different ways and have helped better me as a developer in multiple ways, and then just giving back. I'm very much of the mindset where because so many people have invested in me, again, Driscoll being one of them, I can't just sit here on all of that information that people gave me and not do anything with it, right? So giving back is a very big thing. I'm very much of the mindset, because I've worked on teams where people are very guarded with their information because they're trying to maintain job security. And I think job security is the most ridiculous concept ever. My thing is like, I'm not secure in any position. They can let me go any day. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
No doubt about that.
My plan is to invest in the people and create the best work environment for myself, one, and two, create a team that can really help drive the goals of the company through technology, right? Because again, technology is different everywhere you go. Every company you go to, what they use technology for is slightly different. So really it just became, I got here because people saw my potential and they invested in me, and my space in life is to pay it forward. So I immediately tried to help other people. There are people on the stream right now that I've helped. And it's fun for me, right? The biggest joy for me is when I get a chance to help somebody learn something that they didn't understand, or they got that final spark. Oh, now that I understand this, now I've been looking at this for 3 weeks and it just didn't make sense. Now it makes sense, right? Like those are the good moments. So, that's how I got here, was people investing in me and me just paying it forward.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I totally believe in karma. Like I believe karma is a real thing. And I say that because when I think about my journey throughout .NET up until this point, it's always been because of like the relationships I've built with like other people, right? And I say that because like I just did it, not expecting anything, but then I got a lot. Right. Not expecting a lot, but I got a lot. And that's why I said like I feel privileged, because I got a lot from other people, which is why like, again, like I can make certain choices in my life when it comes to career and work and things of that nature, because people have been able to say, oh, that guy Cecil, he does good work, right? Like I've done things with him before. I've worked on projects with him before. Like I've gone to conferences before. Like we have done things, and I could say yes, like this is like you will get like a level of quality above and beyond what you might expect. You know what I mean? And then that started from, my first job in college. And, I'll tell this story. Like when I left college and I started working, again, like I didn't know .NET, right? I had a book, like a big thing. And I'm going through the book and after the book was done, because it was a big book, but you can only get so much in a book, right? Like at some point you need practical experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't getting that at work. You know what I mean? Because after 5 o'clock, people want to go home, and I get it. Nothing wrong with that. But then I wanted more information, right? Because like in my head, kind of like what you were talking about, like in my head, like I just got here and I don't want to get fired. I want to get as much information as I can and get up to speed as much as I can so I could know, quote unquote, the best practices to do certain things, right? But if everyone else has gone home, like what am I going to do? So I go to user groups, right? Learned what a user group was, and I started going to user groups. And it's so crazy. Like, I would go, I would sit in the back of the room, I'd be like this, and I'd just be chilling out, and then I'd leave. And then until I think maybe like the second or third time, the guys was like, hey, well, what do you do? What do you talk about? And I think after 6 months, he got me to speak, right? And I'm just like, why do you want me to do this? Like, what do you want? Like, I don't know these people. Like, why do you want me to talk to them? Like, there's nothing that I could possibly say that could be of benefit to these people. Like, I just started this job like a year ago. You know what I mean? Y'all have been here like 10, 15, 20 years. Like, what do you want to hear from me, right? And I think in that moment, I learned like, everyone has a different experience, right? Like, it's like the types of things that I was doing aren't the same things that they were doing, right? The frameworks that I was working in and the things that I was building aren't the same things that they were working and building in. And so again, regardless of how young you are in the process, like there's always something that you could find to share. And so that for me was always interesting. But with that now too, so now I'm speaking to rooms of people, about stuff. And, when it came to the point that I was ready to move on and find some opportunities, I had a room of people that I could talk to, you know what I mean? That could, or like very naturally, and I'm not talking about like recruiters and headhunters and whatever the case is. I had a room of friends, right? And I had a rooms of friends that had, experience and knowledge and, and when I say not just experience in working in .NET and writing code, but also experience in like navigating a career. Because again, I just got here. Like I didn't know what this thing was. You know what I mean? Like I just wanted to make sure the rent was paid, right? And I was good, right? But now I have a room of people that I consider to be friends and colleagues that I've known for years at that point, that now are like, hey, they've gone through different companies, they've seen different things, they've had different types of positions and worked at different things. And so now I could ask the question, or I could ask many questions, and then now I'll have information to make the decision that's right for me. And I've kind of just kept doing that throughout my career, throughout every job. Like I tell people, like I've never gotten a job because of a recruiter. Nothing against recruiters. Just want to say that. Nothing against recruiters. But I've never gotten a job because of a recruiter. I've gotten jobs because of people that I know. And people that have always said, okay, well, Cecil can do this. You know what I mean? Like throughout every single company. You know what I mean? And I think that's why for me, like relationships are important. Not because you expect stuff, but because, if you have folks that generally respect you and care about you, you know what I mean? Like there'll be so many good things that'll happen in your life. And it doesn't just have to be like within work, like good things happen outside of work too. You know what I mean? Like things may happen to you, things you may need. You might end up going to another country, right? And maybe one of these folks on the stream might be like, hey, I don't know, maybe you got lost, or maybe, you know what I mean? I don't know, you need to go to the hospital, whatever the case is, right? Maybe one of these folks on the stream and you're in their country, they could be like, you know what, I will help you do a thing. Because you know what, because I know you, I've seen you, you know what I mean? And I respect what you do, you know what I mean? And so now whatever I could do to assist, like I will do that. And same way too, like for me, if that happens, like I will gladly do that for anyone. You know what I mean? Like if Ronnie decides he wants to come to Miami, or Ilanda says like, I don't know, she wants to go to Disney World or whatever the case is, right? They want to come to Florida to do things. And there's something that I can do to assist. I'll be more than willing to do that. But again, and I feel like going back to the beginning, like this is what .NET has done for me, right? Like it has put me in front of certain people, is given me a certain level of privilege, you know what I mean? And then I'll also put me in a position that I could give back and I could share and I can hopefully help empower other people's lives with it as well.
It's our network. Like, although we're working with computers and apps, we're still people. And it's just those apps bringing people closer together.
Yeah, for sure.
So you bring up a pretty interesting point, right? Like, so back in the early days of computing, what they wanted was the computer genius with the pocket protector and the Band-Aid over his glasses that sat in the corner and could churn out code nonstop, right? But today's modern developer doesn't look anything like that. Today's modern developer has to have communication skills. They've got to be able to stand in front of a room with their peers and have a conversation and not get defensive, right? Like there's a lot more to being a developer today, or just not even just a developer, right? Working in the space of technology. There's more than just that I have to be the top technologist. You've got to have more. And I think that that's a very important thing. Another thing you pointed out, and I talked about a little bit, was mentors, right? Like I would not be where I am if I didn't have people that saw me and my potential and was like, Rodney, I want to invest in you, right? I mean, I legitimately wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be driving a garbage truck somewhere, if it weren't for these people that sat and were like, I think that you can do this job. I'm going to invest in you. I want to see what you can do. I'm going to give you a project and see what you do with it. Right. Like those things matter. Getting advice, like you said, about career is important because like I was like you, I got a job. I was making money. I can pay the rent. I can eat food, like real food, not just like noodles and stuff. Exactly. But it evolves so far past that so quickly, and they don't equip us for that coming out of school. And then for the people that don't have the formal schooling, it's in my opinion, not necessarily harder, but different, right? It's harder because you have some people I've met have a concern that they are not as good as others. I'll tell you, one of the best Unix people I've ever met in my life has an English major. And this guy is like funny. A Unix admin guru. I can't even have a serious conversation with him about Unix anymore because he's so far past me. But he's got an English degree, and he's one of the best I know. So this world where you have to fit in this box is gone, right? And now we need to look for people who have the passion, have the talent, have the drive, and want to get better, and just bring them up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so exciting.
No, further, and that's a real thing too.
Freedom.
Right? And you saying that brings up a question in my head that I want to ask for both of you.
Sure.
And that is, who do you think are the historians of technology?
Ooh,
I want y'all to think about.
Tough.
I want you to think about that for a second. I have an answer, but I want you to think about that.
Hold on, because I have a distinction, right? Because I live in a semantic world. Are you asking for the historians or historical figures? There's a difference.
The historians, not the historical figures.
There you go. Okay.
Oh, thanks.
Historians.
I was like, wait a minute, hold on.
Not the historians, not the figures, not the the heads or the people you put on the Mount Rushmore of technology, but like who are like the people that you think are documenting the history of the industry?
Oh, wow. That's a good question.
I've got a couple of people.
Ooh.
I think people like and I'm gonna use these people to talk about general categories, but I think people like the Scott Hanselmans, and Bob Martins of the world are the people that are actually documenting, what it means to be a technologist in this world, what that journey looks like, what they've gone through, what they've had to learn, things that they've So I think those are the people that are actually saying, hey, we went and did this $30 million project and this is what we learned. Those are the historians. Those are the people that are writing the accurate history of our journey, right? Our journey from the AS400 to the iPhone.
You have an answer, Alon? I'm gonna let you answer.
I was gonna say, I agree. I like one of the first name that popped up in my head was Scott Hanselman, just because just like when you see in this year we did this and that, and it's just like, oh my gosh.
No, I agree with you. I think Scott's amazing, and I think maybe one day we can have him come on the show.
Oh, that would be awesome.
We can have him chit chat for a little bit. But my thought is, I think all of us that create content within technology are technically historians, right? And I say this because I used to do a podcast with my friend Richie, and it was called Away from the Keyboard, and we did that podcast pre-pandemic. This is a pandemic we haven't started, but pre-pandemic, and we did it for about 5 years. And I went back and I looked at it, and I listened to some of those episodes the other day, and I find like a lot of those conversations that we have are still relevant. And I looked at that, and I was just like, oh wow, like that's pretty cool. This thing that we created is on the internet, as long as the storage doesn't run out. It's on the internet, right? And folks can go back and learn what we did in 2017, 2018, 2019. Like, and it's funny because it wasn't that long ago, but I feel like the world has changed so much since then. You know what I mean? So like when you go back and you look at your old videos and your old blog posts, right? Like how many times have you actually like gone back to a blog post that you've read 10 times, but you, oh man, how do I do this again? And you go back and read it again, and you're like, oh, okay, I remember now, right?
Yeah.
Like that's history, right?
Yeah.
Like you've gone back in time, or you've gone back to a moment that happened in time to remember what it's like to experience a thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's what we're doing right now. I think that's
future
what
historians.
We've been doing. I think the difference is that like no one is collecting it into like a timeline. And I think maybe that's again, and we're talking about opportunities for people in technology, right? Like maybe that's an opportunity for somebody to like document that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like we were all creating so much more information and content, right, than we were before. And so again, if you listen to, I don't know, whatever technology podcast you listen to, whatever streams you watch, or whatever books you read, right? Like if you all kind of put them into a time series bucket, you know what I mean? Over time, you look at it and you see this flow of information, right? And not only that, you see a flow of change, right? And again, we talk about culture, right? Like you see how our culture has changed over time. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, yes.
And if you take key moments, right? If you take key moments, so let's say I'm going to pick like one of the most obvious moments, right? Like the iPhone, when the iPhone was created, right? Like we go back to Windows 3.1 when Windows had color, right? You know what I mean? I never used it, just saying I'm not that old. But like again, I look back in time and I see these moments from we went from black and white screens, you know what I mean? Like digital terminals, we went to color, then we went to having these things in our hand. Then now we've gone to machine learning and IoT and other things where like technology is like listening. And then if I say the right word, like the thing is going to start talking to me. It's in my room, right? You know what I mean? Like this is what we've gone to. But again, like all of those are just kind of like our historical footprint in the industry. And so I think that's another thing that we implicitly add to, right? Is adding to that like historical time series, right? Like, like we talk about .NET today. I don't know, who knows, God willing, in 5 years, we'll still be doing this. And the three of us, and maybe Corey, of course, in 5 years would be like, you know what? 5 years ago, this is what we were talking about. And this is how the world was different. You know what I mean? And then you know what? All of that stuff that we've done is recorded, it is written, it is documented. Somebody did a podcast, somebody wrote a book. And then we can look back and we can be like, oh, do you remember when? We can start talking to old people, right? The old people go, you remember back in the day when I used to do the thing? But that's us. But again, like when we tell those stories, right, that is his story, right? Like we're telling the story of what we've done before. And so I think, again, I bring it up a lot because I think it's important, right? Because I think it's important because technology is culture. And I remember when I was growing up, I had to learn history. I did Caribbean history, you know what I mean? But then now I think about, well, what about the history of technology, right? And how that affects the culture of people going forward. Like I think those are interesting things that, we could probably have a conversation about.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I feel like, we are building this kind of like this collective pool of data and information that could help, an anthropology study, how each little innovation, change impacted history, impacted culture, and how it kind of fed back into like how culture can feed back into more technological advances. So I can see it like also like from an anthropology perspective too.
Yeah, for sure. Again, I think there's just so many things that we have the potential to do. You know what I mean? So I got another reason why I'm like really excited about jumping in. Looking in the chat really quick, looks like Ronald has suggested some other folks too that he likes. I think we know some of these folks too. So Deborah Carrata. So I know Deborah as a Pluralsight author. I know she's done tons of like Angular courses and stuff like that. I'm sure she does more than that. But again, like I know her as the person that does Pluralsight videos. Do any of y'all know who Deborah is or have ever watched any of her stuff?
I have not.
No,
me neither.
Yeah, she does a
I
lot of
will
stuff in
look into her though.
space. Yeah, Deborah's a really good teacher. Julie Lerman. So for folks in the .NET space, she is like the entity framework person, right?
Yes.
Like the person that has literally written all of the books that people
That's
reference when you
amazing.
talk about entity
Yeah, Julie
framework.
Lerman is brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
Julie Lerman is an amazing person.
Yeah, there it is.
and then also I think when did I meet her? Like, so funny enough, like I met her in Florida. So she used to come down to Florida to do this conference. And yeah, you know when you meet people that like you see people, as in like I saw her name on the book. I'll
Yeah.
see her name on like conference flyers and stuff. Like, so I saw her, but then when you see her in person and you talk to her, you're just like, oh wow, she's just like a regular person, just like me. Like, oh. Which is not to diminish her accomplishments, because
Yeah.
obviously like she's accomplished a lot, but then also, you know, sometimes you have this aura that you put around the person before you even meet them. And then when you meet them and you realize, you know what, like they have similar struggles that I have, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like personal life and, you know, health and all these types of things. Like we all have a thing. And then when you see that, it's not, again, it doesn't diminish the person, but then what it does is like, it elevates me, because I feel like, oh, wow, like if she could battle everything that she's battling or he's battling or whoever the person you meet happens to be, then well, I could battle my demons too. You know what I mean? And I could get to that point. And I could do like some interesting things there as well. So yeah, so I thought those, you know, yeah, those were definitely some good, amazing folks as well. All right, so folks, we're at about an hour. I think it's time for us to put a timeout. Also too, because I have real work I gotta go do.
Oh no,
real work.
Yeah, this is not work. This is fun.
Real work I gotta do. But I mean, one thing I do want to share with folks, and I want to pull this up really quick. So for folks that may not know this, we actually do have a YouTube channel. I'm gonna pull this up really quick. 1 second. But I'd love if you all go and follow us on our social accounts. Like that'll be fantastic. So we do have a Twitter account. Where's my share button? You'd think that I've used this before and I would know the share buttons. Okay.
So you're as good at clicking buttons as I am. Great.
Here we go. Is it? Oh no, is this the right one? Yeah, this is the right one. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So we're live right now. You can see us right here. Again, we're also on Twitch. We're on Twitter. We have some upcoming shows as well that, you know, will be really interesting for folks to go and check out. And then also, if any of you are interested in coming on and presenting a thing, definitely would love to hear about it. You want to talk about Nuke or JetBrains or .NET on AWS or, you know, DevOps or GitHub or anything of the sort. Like, I think that'll be great. Next week, I'm really excited for this one. Next week, we're going to be talking about .NET Dev setups. I don't know why this looks like this. We're going to have to fix this. But anyway, the four of us are going to come on and we're going to talk about like what our setup looks like for building .NET applications. And again, I think this is going to be great because we all have a different perspective, right? Like, again, Alon is new. Ronnie builds mobile stuff. I do some web API microservice stuff. Corey does like some off things. Again, I feel like each of us does another thing that the other person doesn't understand, to be very honest with you. So I think it'll be great to kind of compare those setups and kind of see what the world looks like. Like what kind of, I don't know, what kind of themes do we use and the fonts that we use and the CLI commands that we have set up. And, you know, maybe you have very special extensions you use in Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. Yeah, we definitely want to take a look at some of those and just kind of see, you know, what does the world look like for .NET for other people? So we're gonna take a look at that next week. It'll be next week Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So hopefully y'all can join us for that. And I think that's about it. Am I missing anything, folks? Do you think?
No, don't
I
think
think
so.
that's it. Yeah.
All right. Well, then that's it. Well, folks, thank you all so much for joining us. I do not have outro music, so this is going to be like a hard cut.
Goodbye.
So goodbye. Thank you all so much for being here. We'll be
Bye,
back again
guys.
next week, and hope you all have a good week. All right, bye everybody.